The pill just as effective as the shot? Do you gain the weight back as soon as you stop taking it? And is it really as safe as it sounds? So, y'all have been asking me to do this for a while, and here I am to present to you the ins and outs of GLP-1 agonists from a drug scientist perspective. So, eating is way more complex than you would think. Like, think about all of the different reasons that you've eaten something in the last month or so. So, yes, hunger is definitely one of them, but there's also things like I felt guilted into it by my relative, or it was in front of me and I was bored, or it just sounded genuinely delicious. All of those are valid reasons for somebody to eat something. That's not even everything that goes into this concept of hunger. So, hunger is not just like when you last ate, but how much you last ate. Do you still have fat in your reserves? Has your stomach stretched too much from that last meal? There is this aspect of hunger that is both feeling hungry and also feeling full, and those are actually kind of separate things. And so what GLP-1 agonists are doing are basically making you feel less hungry. So it does things like reduces stomach emptying, which makes you feel not hungry, and then you're not really craving food. Like you don't feel the urge to actually go out and eat. Now, there are 10 different drugs that are actually approved for things like diabetes, which is what the original use of these drugs were, and for weight loss. And we see that it is becoming ridiculously popular. Popular enough that there are like illegal black market sales of it. And also incredibly expensive. So because they are relatively new and they've come onto the market and now everybody wants them, they are extremely expensive. We're talking about probably on average around $1,000 a month, depending on the type of insurance you have. So that's a non-insurance price. Now, there are new versions of these out there. So the original versions of the OG medication was actually just an injectable. So typically something like a once a week injectable. And now they have pill versions. The problem is we still haven't done the direct studies to see if the injectable or the pill is actually better. We see that both actually work decently well. So on average, we're talking about like double-digit weight loss. And it seemed to work better for younger women without diabetes for some reason. Why? We're not entirely sure. But in general, it seems to be very effective, especially in comparison to all other weight loss medication, which has not been great. Most of our previous options were basically like you have a stimulant, so you're going to feel like you have more energy and you don't want to eat as much, or basically it's going to convert fat in such a way that you're just going to constantly poop. So we have basically like two different versions of these. We have the tirzepatides and then we have the semaglutides. And what you actually see is there's kind of a debate about which works best. So there was this large article that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine that said that the tirzepatides work better. And then there is another that said the semaglutides work better. But in general, they both work decently well. It helps with a lot of things. So it's not just weight loss, it also helps with diabetes, and it also seems to be linked to things like a reduction of cardiovascular issues. Now, they also have side effects though. So their main one that basically everybody talks about are GI issues. One of the main reasons that people stop taking it is because they feel extremely nauseated on it, which makes sense because it's dealing with this kind of hunger aspect. So it's dealing with like your entire GI system. You have all of the problems associated with like very fast weight loss. There's a study that suggested that up to 10 to 25% of your weight loss could be due to muscle mass loss, but we don't have a lot of that good research now. And that's part of the problem is like a lot of these people are now taking them, but we don't actually have like long-term research on this. We don't know if it's going to be linked to things like pancreatitis. There are some suggestions it might be. There's some case studies out there, but there's not good evidence. And kind of like vaping, we're all kind of jumping on this bandwagon pretty quickly. So more and more people are using it, which is why we have like words for the faces and the butts of people who commonly use these things. What we see is that rapid weight loss can cause those physical changes. And you have to pay really close attention to whether you're actually eating right. So one of the major problems is that not everyone who is taking this medication is actually obese. There are a lot of people who are in a relatively healthy weight. And so they are actually kind of losing calories. They're not eating as much as they actually need to because they're taking this even though there's not really a medical necessity to. Like, for example, there are lots of stories about models taking this to just stay at the weight that is recommended by their agencies. And long-term kind of malnutrition by not eating that much is problematic. There are cognitive effects of this. I have worked with somebody in a very close capacity where they were using this drug and then they basically started having memory lapses and problem solving. Now, I can't tell you if it's specifically because of this drug, but it seemed like it was directly linked to it. But again, that is an anecdote. We do not have the good evidence on this, so we don't necessarily know what's going to happen when you continue to take these drugs long term. That is not necessarily suggesting that they are not safe. We have a lot of people taking them and they don't show that terrible of side effects, but we don't know if it presents problems long term. Now, what is actually going on with weight loss long term? What we see in terms of like the very few studies that we have is that typically the weight loss will plateau around a year. And if you stop using that drug, you will basically start to gain the weight back. So you have to have this kind of regimented diet and exercise plan to maintain that weight loss afterwards. Which, in case you did not know, is quite difficult for a lot of people to do. Look at New Year's resolutions, which is why we kind of created these drugs in the first place. So if you're thinking about starting to take it, think about the fact that like, you will probably have to be on this for a very long time, and then you will have to put in the work to make sure it maintains it once you stop using it. Now, people are citing all sorts of weird things about this drug. So they're saying things like it can cause personality changes. We don't have good evidence of that. People say it might increase the risk of depression or suicide. And again, it's too new. We don't have good evidence for or against that. People also suggest that this drug can do amazing things outside of things like obesity. So maybe it can help with things like depression. And there was a randomized controlled study that said basically, no, we didn't find much of anything there. People suggest that it could work for something like Alzheimer's. And it might be okay as a preventative, but it does not seem to directly affect the plaques and tangles, which are kind of like the biological problem associated with dementia. The Parkinson's results are also mixed. We don't have good evidence that suggests that it could work as either a preventative or a treatment for Parkinson's. But we do have relatively good evidence in terms of maybe it could work for something like addiction. Like maybe we could help stop alcohol use. And I've done an entire video about this. So if you're curious about the different types of drugs, go look at that. But it seems like out of all of the potentials, it might be best for that. So is it as safe as it seems? We are not entirely sure right now, but we don't have a ton of reports saying that it isn't. Similar to poppers, we have a lot of people who've used it and a lot of people have not had any sort of major issues with it, so we might be okay. But we also don't have long-term use information, and that is a little bit worrisome. Is it beneficial? Yeah, it's really good at things like weight loss. It's really good for things like diabetes. Maybe not as good for some of the other things that they like to say it's good for. But does it have side effects? Yeah, every drug out there does. So this is something for you and your doctor to decide if it is a potential avenue for you. Think about the pros and cons, think about the long-term implications of using it, and decide if the positives outweigh the negatives for you. Because in the end, it's always your choice.